I explained there was 400 years of silence between the Old Testament to the New Testament, and kind of what's been going on at this point for God's people is they have been practicing outwardly religion. They've been practicing outwardly a righteous kind of living, but privately what's going on is they're living totally willing to sin at any level. They don't mind it as long as outward works are being portrayed instead of what's happening in the private time. So let me bring this into kind of today's terms that we can relate to. It's kind of like, you ever heard people say, I can't wait to get to church and be in God's presence? You ever heard that? I want to worship in God's presence. Or maybe sometimes we go out and we'll walk through the forest and we say, man, I really feel close to God right now. Or sometimes we even go to the beach and we'll sit and we say, we really feel close to God. And you know, all those things are good, but the problem is we can't localize God to a certain place. We can't localize Him to church only or wherever we think He might be at. Like that's what's going on here is for Israel, they're saying, look, we haven't heard from God for 400 years, so He must be absent. He must not be watching what I'm doing because we're not hearing His voice. We're not listening to Him like we were when the prophets were around. But the fact is, we feel God's presence. We're in His presence even when we're arguing with each other on the way to church. Do we realize that? We are in His presence even in that moment. But what happens though when we go to the forest or we go to the beach or we get to church and we're basking in His presence? What's happening in us? We are actually becoming aware of His presence. His presence hasn't changed in us. His being there, His longing to be with us hasn't changed. It's our awakening that we realize God is here. But He's always been with us. And Israel's not realizing that. They're practicing an outward religion and not worrying about what their home life looks like. So it's important to understand that He's here just as much as He is in the corporate worship as He is the ride in the car getting to here. So it doesn't matter though if you're basking in the sun at the beach or you're in your darkest moment, of depression, of anxiety, of pain, of hurt, or whatever you're going through in life and darkness is surrounding you, it doesn't matter. We can't escape God's presence. It's absolutely invading every area of our life. He is there at every moment. When we feel like it or not, He is there. Practicing, though, the presence of Jesus, it's an attitude in our heart. When we're practicing the awareness, our heart, our situation in our heart has changed. It's our attitude. We are here because we know God is here, but we don't practice all the time that God is everywhere. He's with us. So if my heart is aware of His presence, if I actually live like that, like I do at church, I wouldn't need to hear preaching about, hey, what's it look like to be holy? What's it look like to live a righteous life? Because if we were aware of His presence 24 hours a day, our heart would respond to that presence and we would be aware of Jesus and we would act like He was in the room with us at all times. It would change our behavior. So, why are we here? What is church all about? Church becomes a place where we acknowledge the daily invading presence of God. We come here to acknowledge it and to celebrate it as a group, and we get to bask in it even more. But it's a celebration on what we've been through all week. So whether we're worshiping here at Star Center, or we're going to our new place in January, or if we're at the house, or if you're in the car, it doesn't matter. His presence is everywhere with us. And that's what Israel doesn't realize. They're thinking, hey, 400 years of silence, we're on our own. That's why Jesus had to come in the flesh. That's why when Mark says this is the beginning of the gospel, He came physically so people could see and be aware of God's presence.
Take me